Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, the Flying V edition, where we talk to incredible people who are creating impact and ripples on the pond. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck, but that's what makes them awesome. Today, my guest is Dave Schellenberg. Dave is the CFO of Decor Cabinets based out of Morden, Manitoba, Canada. I had Stan Pauls, the CEO of Decor, on previously as a guest and wanted to continue the conversation with more of the team, as what Decor Cabinets does to better the pond is absolutely exceptional. Now, Dave was raised with very high values. His father liked to influence people's hearts, and his mother influenced people's heads. With Dave's competitive nature and drive, he has learned from his mistakes and in turn understands the true power of leadership and how it impacts the people around him. Listen to what Dave and Decor are doing to better the pond. They are creating ripples all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Schellenberg. All right, Mr. Dave Schellenberg, all the way from Winkler, Manitoba. Happy New Year. You are officially the first Pondcast guest of 2024. So Dave Schellenberg from Decor Cabinets, CFO, I am so happy to have you as a guest.
Thank you very much, Warren. I'm happy to be here and feel very honored to be the first member of the podcast for 2024.
The very first, we're heading off. We are gonna this is like the bomb of 2024 right here.
There you go. Nice. I like it.
So I'd met you, Dave, when I came out your way to work with Decor Cabinets. So the CEO Stan Pauls, the fifth hammer as we know him, we'll give him a little shout out. He was also a guest, and so I came in and worked with your leadership team, and of course you were the victor of the biggest contribution to the day, and therefore become a guest. But but really, I mean, I found you to be really interesting, Dave. A really interesting person. You're very smart, and what you're doing to help with Decor Cabinets and everything you do to better the pond. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to get you on here.
Sounds great. Yeah, I look forward to it. We very much appreciate you. So Warren came and spoke to our SLT, our senior leadership team, helped with our strategic planning and on that day, and helped to enlighten us on the different personalities and what makes each of us tick. And it was a very good conversation, and it helped provide some insight into our team and how we talk to each other and how we interact. So it was great. So looking forward to having this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So to get going here, why don't you sort of explain to my listeners a little bit about, what you do and a little bit about Decor Cabinets?
Sure. So yeah, Dave Schellenberg, I'm the CFO here at Decor Cabinets. We're in Morden, Manitoba. I've been at Decor for 20 years. Before that, I worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers in Winnipeg for a few years articling. I'm a CPA, formerly CA, I guess you could say. We became CPAs all about 10 years ago or so, something like that. And I run the finance team. So we have a group of 5 or 6 people in the finance area that do all the usual finance tasks. And I'm on the management team over here, and really responsible for all finance related activities of the company. And so Decor Cabinets, we've existed since 1977, when it was started in Ports of Prairie, just outside of Winnipeg, I guess you could say, just a little bit west of Winnipeg. And Decor is a manufacturer of custom kitchen and bath cabinetry. And so we got sales all across Canada and the US. We're approaching about 100 million in sales this past year, not quite there. So we sell through a network of dealers across Canada and the US. So if you as a homeowner, you want a new kitchen or something like that, then you could walk into one of these dealerships, one of these showrooms, and they might direct you towards our product line, from which then a certified kitchen designer would help design a kitchen for you. And we cater largely to the remodel market because we are fairly highly custom. So we can make a kitchen to pretty much any specification, not quite, I guess, probably our production, our sales guys might say a little bit differently, but it feels that way at times. And so we'll make it look like the kitchen has always existed in your house, the way that you built the house. And we do a fairly good job, I think, of producing a nice quality product for our customers. And so that's kind of who we are, what we do in the end. But the company largely exists to actually help those less fortunate, and mostly from a faith-based perspective. So we do like to make money so we can give it away, honestly. And Stan might have talked a bit about this in his podcast as well. If not, he was probably too humble in doing so, but which is quite possible. But we largely exist to try to help less fortunate, helping those in third world countries and whatnot, either through orphanages that we sponsor, through faith-based, Christian faith-based missions abroad, whether they be in China or wherever it might be. But that is really the core and the heart of the business, is to help those less fortunate. I think so. I think that fits quite well to the better the pond type of theme that you've had as well. So I think it's a good fit.
Yeah, when we get to that question, we're going to dive specifically right into
Yeah,
that, and you can basically, sort of elaborate a lot more.
sure.
And you're right, Stan didn't elaborate a whole lot on that piece. So this is a
Yeah.
great opportunity to really share. And I think it's really important, um, because I think, you look at a lot of businesses, and a lot of businesses will say, well, in the business and we're going to make money. Right. And,
Mm,
but what you said was really powerful is, we're making money so we can give it away and empower others, which is that's a
yes.
really different angle from what we would typically hear in sort of the capitalistic world.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And we still, obviously the goal is to make money, but it's for the
Sure.
purpose of being able to help others. In our case, is the main purpose. Of course, we're in business to make money for ourselves as well, but there's a lot more to it than that, and that's kind of what we try to embody.
Yeah. So I can't wait to jump into that part of the podcast. That's gonna be
For sure.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's spend it a little bit about you, Dave.
Yeah.
So Dave, what got you from being a gosling? And I mean, like your where you started life, where you were hatched, right from the very beginning, right, to leaving the nest. When either you decided to go out on your own, or you got
Mhm.
kicked out of the nest, one of the two. I don't know really what the story is, right? To where you are today. So Dave Schellenberg, what is your backstory?
Okay. So I was born in a town called Steinbach, which is just about an hour and a half southeast of Winnipeg. And so born there, raised through grade 12 kind of thing, and very loving family kind of thing. My parents very much embodied or instilled a lot of the values that I still have today in me. So they were very supportive of me. They weren't very strict, I would say, by any means. I don't know if maybe they should have been or not, depending on, I guess, how I was. But I think I was a decent kid. I don't know. Um, but yeah, they're very loving and supportive. And my dad, for example, he's always my hockey coach. Every hockey team that I kind of played growing up, very involved that way, and just wanted to be there for me and my brother. So yeah, uh, my parents had two kids, me and an older brother. He's about 3.5 years older than me. He's a social worker in Winnipeg, has been for a number of years. But yeah, we were very involved in sports growing up. Yeah, playing outside, playing street hockey every night, kind of thing, on the driveway with the friends down the street and all that. So I think I had a pretty good childhood that way. My mom was a school teacher, so she went to she didn't have any education before having kids as far as post-secondary education. It was
Hmm.
only after I started kindergarten that she went back to school. And so she went back to university, driving into Winnipeg. Like I said, an hour and a half drive to get there. So she would do that while my brother and I were in school. So very dedicated, very hardworking that way. And she had a long career as a teacher, an elementary school teacher, got her master's eventually, teaching English as a second language, and supported a lot of the different school districts in our area with those programs. So very dedicated, hardworking mom. My dad worked at Providence College, used to be called Winnipeg Bible College for a number of years, but it's actually not even in Winnipeg, even though it was called Winnipeg Bible College. They moved outside of Winnipeg probably, I don't know, like 50 years ago, well, about 45 years ago, I think, something like that. And so he was the finance guy. So he was the VP
Ah.
of finance, go figure, right? And so he was the finance guy at Providence, and he still goes in probably 2 to 3 days a week. And so he has worked there more years than I've been alive. So he's got to be about 50 years now. I'm 47. And so he has been there probably right just short of 50 years at
Wow.
Providence. So that's pretty exceptional. And I mean, he could have gone other places with his job kind of thing, but he always liked the atmosphere at Providence. He liked the fact that he felt like he was giving back to kids in their education, and specifically faith-based education. And so that's kind of always been instilled in me as well, is trying to give back, and the faith aspect, of course. And so my dad has been my role model since I was very young. He still is today. He is kind of what I still want to be, still working on that. I think we're all on our own journey, really, right? But he's kind of been that rock for me, and he's embodied. When you think of the word or the phrase servant leader,
Okay.
if you were to look that up in a dictionary, you should see his face,
Mm.
basically. So very humble, never wanting to take on, like we spoke a bit before this the recording started, but a bit more about staying in the background a little bit and not being acknowledged maybe for when you should be. But he's always been that guy he'll give you the shirt off his back. If you need a ride to the airport in the middle of the night and he doesn't know who you are, he'll be the first guy to jump up and do it.
Mm.
He's very selfless that way, but has a big impact on people. He's very outgoing, gregarious, just loves to talk to people and make people feel good. I don't think I quite inherited from him that ability to do that, but I'm working on that. I don't have quite the natural gift that he does to
Mm.
do that. Although he did share with me the other day, he said he's actually an introvert, which blew me away because I would never have called him that. So
Oh,
he obviously works on his craft or works on it, but yeah, he's a great guy, and like I said, he's been my role model for since I was born. So I've been very fortunate to have him as my dad that way.
what do you think is the biggest lesson that your dad taught you, Dave?
Hmm. That's a good question to pick one, and this is off the top of my head. But the biggest lesson I would say is along the lines of the servant leadership side of things, that you can lead without being the guy at the top calling the shots and taking all the accolades or whatever. You can lead, you can make a difference in people's lives, um, and be nice and without getting the acclaim that maybe you should be. That you can contribute to people's lives through a comment, through a gesture, through the small things that you can do, or the big things too.
Hmm.
But even just through the small things that don't get noticed, and you can make a significant difference in people's lives. I would say that's the biggest thing that has kind of rubbed off on me as far as lessons from my dad.
Hmm. And what about your mom? What do you think the number one lesson that you learned from your mom or that your mom taught you?
Yeah, it'd be somewhat similar, but the same kind of idea. She's someone that too. She can be in the kitchen, she can be out, she can be doing whatever, um, helping people. She, for example, like with the recent Ukrainian refugees, she's all over that, helping them out. Or even before that, to those coming from the Middle East refugees. So she's been very involved in Winnipeg in helping settle them into the community. And again, it's not for any personal gain. It's to help out. So really the same kind of concept, and maybe that's why they're made for each other that way. So they do embody those things.
Where do you think that's it's really fascinating, Dave. You really, I mean, you've really got my attention with this. Where do you think that stems from? If you look at your dad, of just, like, and you're probably going to sort of paraphrase it. It's being kind. Yeah, you don't have to do the big things. Sometimes it's something, a small gesture, a small action, or somebody, you need to ride in the middle of the night and I don't know you, I'll do it because it's being kind.
Yeah.
Same with your mom, sort of, and I see that, that obviously that's rubbed off on you. Where do you think that stems from?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's something innate or if it's from their faith, because we are a strong Christian family, and maybe it might come from the morals and the values that we have that way. So, going further back from my dad, um, my grandpa was a church planter who kind of went to various areas within Manitoba and Saskatchewan, church planting. I remember stories my dad tells me, even in Ports of Prairie, where he part of one of the cities or towns that he grew up in. Their home was in the church because they couldn't afford a house. So literally Sunday morning, he got kicked out of his room because they had to hold Sunday school in there. So it's not they didn't have a lot of money, but they had strong values and a strong desire to help people. And I think that's just been ingrained in his DNA, and I can see that in my uncles on his side of the family as well.
Mhm.
It's interesting. And on my mom's side of the family, actually, they're all academics. So they're all teaching either at universities, or at least were. They're all retired now, but they all either were librarians, teachers, even the spouses. Those that they married were all involved in the education background. So again, helping younger people to succeed, helping younger people to learn. That's been a part of who she has been and what her family has been. So I think you combine those two things on both sides of the family, and it kind of, I guess, produces me and my brother in that way. And I'm hoping we can live up to the legacy.
Well, it's kind of interesting when you say that. What comes to my mind is your dad was helping people's hearts and your mom was helping people's minds.
Yeah, hey, that's I never thought about it, but you could definitely think of it that way, for
Yeah.
sure.
So a couple different things growing up. So what was your first job, Dave?
Uh, so my first job was working for my dad at Providence College. So back then, computers were just starting to become the thing, and coming out. And so they had to, okay, so Providence College, it's in this little town of like maybe a couple hundred people, about half hour south of Winnipeg. And it used to be like a Catholic monastery type of a place. I don't know the whole background, but it's super old. The building is incredibly old. And so what they had to do was they had to get computer wire run throughout that whole building. And I was the young guy who given the grunt work of doing that. And so I had to get into the rafters, under the floor, wherever. And you kind of almost like, I almost expected to see skeletons in the walls kind of thing, really, as I was trying to run this stuff. But I remember I got cut so many times by nails sticking through boards and whatnot that actually I started wearing all my hockey equipment because I was a hockey player, like in high school or whatever. So I would literally put on my elbow pads, shin pads, all my hockey equipment, and start crawling through all the rafters and whatnot, running this computer wire because they had to get computer wire run through the whole place to run this new fandangled thing called computers, essentially. And so that was my first job. That and cutting grass, but the running computer wires are a lot more interesting, but abusive on the body, probably. I could say I had a few nicks.
I can imagine this old, ancient, dusty building, and you're up in the attic where it's probably about 40 degrees, and if it was in the
Totally.
summertime, and
Yeah,
just awful.
yeah.
And
That
there
was
you
my
were.
summer job. Yeah, yeah. That's what I did. So that was kind of my introduction to the work life. And I thought, how does anybody work 8 hours a day doing this kind of stuff? And not just that, but 8 hours a day in general. Like, how do you do that? Because I'm just a kid who wants to go play street hockey or something.
Right. Yeah. The last thing you probably want to do was that.
Yeah,
But
totally.
did
Yeah.
you get paid?
I got paid, I think, $4.50 an hour for doing that. So I got big money. Or about either 4.25 or 4.50, whatever minimum wage was at the time. It was something like that. And so, yeah, I guess on an 8 hour day, making $25, $30 or something like that for sacrificing your blood was better make good use of that $30, I guess, when you get home. So,
And did you save up and buy your first car?
eventually, yeah. So I guess actually, sorry, $40 at 8 hours times. Well, yeah, 35, $4. I did eventually buy my first car, yeah. And so I bought it and it was a hand-me-down. So my dad bought it for my grandpa and I bought it for my dad. It was a 1987 Oldsmobile Forenza. And my
Ooh.
grandpa, who was the church planter guy, he loved Zote. What they called in the Mennonite or German is called Knockzote, which is basically sunflower seeds.
Okay.
But it's a cultural thing in the area. You have Zote. And so he loved it so much. He would just anytime he was driving, he would be chewing on these sunflower seeds. And he he wouldn't just spit them in a cup, the shells. I think they do go everywhere in the car. So I was picking Zote out of that car for years, the sunflower seed shells. Eventually, we had to get it professionally cleaned because it was just, yeah, it was bizarre. But eventually, yeah, I think I bought the car for like $1,000 or $800 or something like that off my dad,
Yeah.
even with the Zote. So,
Even
yeah,
with the Zote, complete with
yeah,
Zote. Otherwise, it
yes,
would have been way less money.
totally. It added value, I'm sure, somehow.
Oh, that's awesome. So, what got you to leaving the nest? So, did you leave the nest on your own to go out and get
Yeah.
educated, or did you get kicked out? Which was it?
I did not get kicked out. I kind of always knew that I wanted to go to Providence where my dad worked. But then I also always knew that I wanted to go to University of Manitoba and do something there as well. So I went to Providence for 1 year, and lived in dorm, which is a great kind of stepping stone for me, getting out of the house kind of idea. And so, yeah, lived in dorm there, enjoyed the 1 year there, took biblical studies as well as a bunch of other courses. Um, yeah, I really enjoyed it there. Played on the hockey team. Actually played on the Providence hockey team for 6 years, even though I only actually went there for 1 year. I guess that's a benefit of being one of the VP of Finance's son, and they still needed hockey players, so I could do that. But yeah, I went from there and then went to U of M after that. But between Providence and U of M, I knew I needed to make money too. So one of the biggest, actually, and this is one of the biggest things in my life that really taught me leadership and hard work, is that I went tree planting in northern BC. So I tree planted for 6 summers near Smithers, BC, which is northwest of Prince George. And so I did that for a company called Silveram. And so what they do is, if there's obviously forestry is really big in northwestern British Columbia, and so if they come in and do a clear cut, they have to, by law, reforest whatever they cut. And so they'd have planters go in there and plant trees, and it's very rigorous as far as the requirements, how far apart the trees have to be. The quality of the tree can't be a leaner, can't be too deep, can't be too shallow, can't do a J root, all these different things for us from a quality standpoint, that the trees have to have the best chance of surviving. And so I did that for 6 summers. I planted myself for 4 summers. And then I foremaned a crew for 2 summers after that as well. And so I was always been told, my brother had done it in Ontario before. And so I kind of knew a little bit about it beforehand, but I thought BC, I heard, was a bit better money. And well, you're planting potentially on the side of a mountain, planting trees, and you're outside. And I loved the outdoors. And honestly, I had a crappy work ethic beforehand. And this taught me work ethic, because here you paid per tree. So you're not paid on an hourly basis. So you might make as little as 8 or 9 cents a tree, or at the most, probably 15, 16 cents per tree that you plant. And so averaging up probably about 11 cents per tree that you plant, mostly pine. And so basically you'd load up with about 300, 360 trees on you in these bags that were wrapped around your waist. And you're given a section of this clear cut that you have to plant. So you have to basically get it full of trees. And so the harder you work, the more money you made. And so being the brash guy, I probably started out too fast and planting too quickly, and then you'd have someone come around and check your quality of your work, and they'd say, oh, it's not good enough. Well, then you got to stop and go redo all your work, which really sucks, because you're not making any money. You're just fixing your mistakes from before.
Right.
And so you learn fairly quickly that you only go as fast as what you can do quality work, which I think applies to a lot of areas of life beyond this as well. But I learned that fairly quick, and I had some of the worst days of my life out there doing that, and some of the best days of my life. I can still remember one day we were finishing up a block, a clear cut area is called a block, and I had the checker come around and said my trees weren't good enough, so I had to go replant it. So they're okay, fine. So whatever, I go around trying to fix up all my trees. I think I'm done. I start planting again. The guy comes around again. He says, checks them again. He says, no, they're still not good enough. You got to go check them all again. It's like, seriously? And then it started to rain. And then I could see all my buddies on my crew going over and hitting what we call the cream, which basically means it's fast ground. It's the best ground. You can plant really, really quickly. It's easy to plant. And so I'm sitting here in the rain, cold, redoing all my work, where I could see these guys hitting the cream and planting really quickly, and so making a lot of money. And I remember telling some people afterwards, it's like, I can't think of what the worst day of my life was, but now I know what the worst day of my life was. So I learned some lessons out there very quickly, is that do a good job. You can work fast, sure, but you can only work as fast as what you can do quality work of. And so that was a lesson I've kind of carried throughout my life. But that job taught me, honestly, I hate to say it, but it taught me more about hard work, and eventually from the foremaning standpoint as well, taught me more about leadership than I ever learned in university or anywhere else. Because I had to hire my own guys. I had to start my own crew from scratch. I didn't inherit a crew from somebody else kind of retiring, you could say, moving on. But I was told I'm allowed to start my own crew. So I had to phone interview people in BC, Ontario, all over the place, phoning them to try to get them to come out and plant for me. So I did all of my own interviews. So basically it was my own HR department. I didn't want a crew of all rookies, because then I would be the only one who could teach them and show them how it's done and indoctrinate them into the culture and everything. So I did find a vet, but then I very quickly, once we started up, I learned why he was a veteran that was available to come to my crew, is because he had a terrible attitude, was fairly cancerous and on the team, I guess you could say. So I learned fairly quickly, don't just take a guy because he's got experience.
Right.
So he was not with me the next year. I think it was a mutual decision, I think. But yeah, I learned a lot of lessons doing that job. Incredibly, like, so again, hard work and leadership where I learned from that job. And even then, and after 6 years, most people think of it as a really, really hard job, and it was, and it is. And most people hate it doing it because there's endless bugs. It's rain. You're out there. It's exposed to the elements. Whatever's there, it is. It is. You can't get away from it. And you're working from sun up till sundown. So long days, hardworking, physical days. But I loved it so much. Even after my last year, I planted the last summer, even though I could have been working at my new job at PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC at the time. I went back and planted another summer. And then even after that, um, I took my vacation time and flew back out there because I wanted to see my crew again. Because one of my guys that was a rookie for me one of those years now inherited my crew. So I wanted to see him, see how he was doing, see everybody again. So basically, I went out there for a few days, planted enough myself to pay for my plane ticket and a little bit more. But just, I loved it. So that's how I chose to spend the vacation time that I had available, or 1 week of it at least.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed my time out there. And I just love the physical aspect and the nature aspect of getting out there.
Right. That's very interesting. When I've been reading a book just recently called Moonshot, and it's a by an astronaut, and it's sort of talking about his story of getting basically taking your moonshot. So and being determined that here's my dream, here's my goal, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get there. But
Okay.
one of the topics that he talked about was go slow to go fast.
Oh, okay.
And right, so go slow, right, to do the work properly and do it right the first time, which allows you to
Yes,
go fast,
exactly.
right? Which is sort of what the point that you were saying about you can only go as fast as what the quality will allow you to. So if you do crappy quality and do it 4 times over,
Yeah, it doesn't help
right,
you anything in the
doesn't
end
help
of it.
you.
Get it right. It's kind of like practice in hockey or any kind of sport, really, right? Too. That's why you practice. That's why you get into the repetition of doing things the right way, and eventually it becomes innate and second nature in what you do, and then you can pick up the speed at what you're able to do. But don't go faster than you're able to. Like we'll probably talk about this in a bit, but I tell that to kids that I coach. I coach hockey still today for my son, and the same idea. Like only go as fast as you can do the drill well.
Hmm.
Don't just like if you're doing circles and doing crossovers or whatever, don't just do it fast to get it done. Get it right. And once you got the technique right, then you can start to pick up the speed. And it applies to a lot of areas of life.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so with that, I want to actually jump a little bit. And I'm gonna the next question I'm gonna ask you, and I think you've already answered it, but I don't know see if you want to expand on it at all. But the question actually is, what's the greatest thing that's happened to you that's ruffled your feathers, and that's positive or
Oh,
negative, and how did you respond to it? So you've kind of already led into it. Did you want to actually add anything to that at all? Because I
uh,
mean, your story of tree planting has obviously taught you a lot.
yeah, totally. Off the top of my head, well, that's the one person that comes to mind. This biggest thing that's ruffled my feathers. That'll be one. I'll share two things, but that would be the first one. So how do you respond to those moments of adversity, really, right?
Hmm.
Do you get down? And being at the time, I probably would have been about 18 years old or so. Yeah, I'm sure I did get down on myself and did not have a great day or a great evening. But at the same time, I think I knew at the time that if I just get down and sulk and kind of check out from my brain, that's not going to help me because the next day is a new day. And again, the more trees I plant, the more money that I would make and the more things I'd be able to do with that. So you can't just get down into this hole. You got to be able to pick yourself out of it and keep going and showing that perseverance. And so I can't tell you exactly how well I responded the next day. Probably not the best, I'm guessing. I can't say I'm perfect by any means. Obviously, I'm far ways from that. But I do know in the long run, the next year at least, I was a second top producer in the whole camp of about 50 or 60 planters.
Wow.
So I think I responded well, at least maybe not in the immediate, but I would have responded well in the long term there for sure. So yeah, it's learning from your mistakes and how do you get better? How do you improve and not just get down on yourself? Uh, so
Was there a defining moment, if you're not just sort of you're on that point, do you ever remember a defining moment that sort of shifted your thinking? Whether it was you woke up one morning or before you went to bed at night or so when something went wrong, was there something that shifted you from going, you know what, I'm gonna learn from this and I'm gonna get
Yeah.
better and get on the other side of this.
I think what I would say is that I'm a fairly competitive person,
Hmm.
especially being in like a sports background, that kind of thing. And I would say that honestly, making the money was a part of it, kind of thing. But I even if whether I made $200 that day, $300 that day, or $400 that day, whatever it was, wasn't as big a deal even how much I made. But I want to make sure I beat everybody else. I hate to say it, but so that was a bigger thing for me, and it kind of clicked for me that if I have crap quality, then I'm spending my time fixing my trees while the guy next to me is still planting and making money, and that made it harder to be the best or to plant more trees than him. And so the competitive nature, I think, for me drove me a fair bit that way, more so than anything. I know it might not be the best answer, but to be honest, I think that's really more so what it was, because it was always I was always trying to do more than the guy next to me, essentially, just from a competitive standpoint.
Right. Okay, so it's just about competition, right?
And more so that way,
But
yeah. I wish I could say it was an altruistic type of a thing. Like even tree planting, you heard about people that would go out there and like want to almost like water their trees to help them grow. And as much as I love the fact that I was helping nature, that wasn't my main goal in going out there. Um, it was more to make money because I was in school, and I was only wanting to work the 3 months of the year and being able to focus on schoolwork the rest of the year. So I had to go hard while I had that time.
right, yeah, maximize
Yeah,
what you need to get done. Huh.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so from our time together, Dave, when I was there, you now know that geese fly 71% further and faster when flying in the V formation.
Yes.
So, what do you think the secret is to getting a team flying in a V formation?
Hmm. I got to think about that for a sec. So I think the best thing, yeah, there's only obviously a lot of things that impact that, but having a common goal, getting people pointed in the same direction, and giving them the motivation to get to that common goal. However you do that, there can be a lot of different ways to motivate people. Um, but that's the biggest thing. So, and that's the thing, like even within my team, within most teams, we don't have all the same thing that motivates us.
Hmm.
Everybody's different. So the way I might talk to somebody, encourage or motivate one member of my team might be totally different than how I do that with another person. So everybody has different things that drive them. So you gotta have a common a trust, develop a trust with your team and with each member individually. Get that trust and then figure out what makes them tick and what are the things that drives them, and share that vision of where you want to get to, what's that goal, and find the things that motivate people to get there. Um, and not just to do it individualistically. You might have different things that motivate people individually,
Hmm.
but yet you need to get them to work together as a team to get to that common goal, because yeah, everybody achieves more together. Everybody achieves more is the acronym for team, really, right? Obviously,
Right.
and it's so true, because if you get people pointed for that right to the same point, the same goal, and get them motivated, there's nothing they cannot do. And that's, I think, the key to getting that 71% you're talking about, better efficiency from flying in a V formation.
So when you look at something like decor, right? We want to have decor. I mean, obviously, if you're getting upwards of that $100 million of sales, I mean, it does take a lot of people and a lot of teamwork and a quite a dynamic in order to achieve those things. So when you look at something like decor, what do you think the belief is that get people to buy into that? What's that common goal that you can strive towards?
Yeah, that's interesting. So we do a lot of different things within the company. We have a fairly unique culture, I think, and most people that come into our organization kind of say that. Like when you come in and take a tour of our plant or something like that, you'll see a lot of people smiling and enjoying their job actually, and like being a part of the culture. We do, yeah. a lot of things within a culture. I'll share a couple of just quick examples that are fairly minute as compared to the grand scheme of things. But even for when family members, when people at Decor and their kids start going to kindergarten,
Mhm.
we do this big get up where we set it all up in one of our meeting rooms. So we have balloons lining the walkway that these kids walk through, and we buy them backpacks, shoes, school supplies, all these things. And these kids, I can see them out of my office window when they come. And it's just phenomenal to see how excited they are when they see this setup coming in. And they get to walk in and get all this stuff. I think a water bottle and all these various things that are customized to what they want and what they need for school. And just seeing the smiling faces, but more so seeing the parents as they get to walk them through and taking pride in coming into the combination of having pride in your place of work coming in, but now involving your family in that as well. That's huge. And so having these two worlds collide in a very positive manner is a big deal. No different than a family picnic that we can have in the summer to whatever it might be. So getting people's families involved is a big thing, and sharing our beliefs, our values, our culture with them is a big thing. To a lot of just the little things again throughout the company, kind of sharing with people what they're supporting by working here, that their money isn't just going to lining somebody's pockets somewhere kind of thing, but how they're making a difference in people's lives outside of the business. I think for a lot of people, that's why they're here. That's a big reason why I'm here and I'm still here. I've been here for just over 20 years now, is knowing that you're working for a bigger purpose, not just for a share price to be elevated or something like that. But you are making you are actually making difference in people's lives. I mean, it's too easy to say that at times, and people might say that, but what are you actually doing to accomplish that? And in our ways, I know as the CFO, what we're working towards and where we provide funding to help those less fortunate. How we treat employees. I can't get into specifics, but I know we treat our employees very well. And if they are in a bad spot, we will try to help them. I'm not saying financially entirely, but we will do what we can to help people get out of tight situations where possible. We kind of go above and beyond what most other companies would. And that helps develop the culture, that helps reduce your turnover, that helps improve job satisfaction. There's just so many positive aspects to it.
One of the things I find interesting what you said there, Dave, too, is that, like even said with the kids would start in kindergarten. I think that's actually really cool. I've never heard
Yeah.
anybody do that. Super cool. But it's not just about helping that person at work, right? It's
Yeah,
about helping them at work, obviously, but it's also about helping them outside work in their personal lives. So it's a part of it's, really helping them in their life, not just in their work life.
totally. Yeah, exactly. And that's a big deal to us because we say we're undeniably different is our tagline. And we try to embody that in a lot of ways. And sometimes we don't feel like we are as much as we should be, probably. But that's who we want to be. And that's what every day you need to work towards. You're never really there. You're never really probably where you want to get to. But you know what? We don't fully acknowledge, especially in a leadership role, we don't know how we affect people's lives.
Mhm.
Same thing as you kind of said, like you're never off duty as a leader. Like if you're walking down the hallway, if you make a certain comment, a certain gesture, you don't understand how you impact people,
Mhm.
but you do. People are watching,
Yep.
really, right? And how you handle yourself, how you use your time, how you treat people gets noticed.
Mhm.
Um, and it's too often just to not think about that. I think we take that for granted that we make a difference in people's lives, and our attitudes, our actions impact people, and we need to be a bit more cognizant of that. And we try to do that consciously at times, but it needs to become a part of your DNA and how you do things. As far as acknowledging people, yeah, making sure they feel valued.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. All right, so let's get into this piece of the podcast. This is where Stan kind of left off, and I think you can carry on as talking about what are you doing right now to better the pond? What
Sure.
ripples are you creating out there? Would you like
Sure.
either yourself or Decor?
Okay. Okay. Myself or Decor. I'll start out with one that is a bit of a synergy for me between myself and Decor, because I've shared a little bit about obviously Decor's heart and what we want to do in helping people. And one of my passions is sports, as I've said, and one of those sports I love to do is golf.
Ah,
And so, you know, like I said, I started here 20 years ago, and one of the first management meetings I was a part of, um, the president and CEO, Larry Dick, at the time, asked if he said he's a golfer as well, and he asked if anybody was interested in helping out with running a golf tournament. He's kind of had this dream, I think Stan probably as well, of running a charity golf tournament. And back then, that's when a lot of charity golf tournaments was a big thing, and they still are today. But I kind of kept my hand down, being the new guy for a while, seeing if anybody else would raise their hand if they were interested, and nobody did. So I was like, sure, I'll do that. Um, my dad had organized at Fort Providence College their charity golf tournament for a few years already. It started about 5 years prior to that, and so I kind of had some familiarity from how he ran it. So I said, sure. So I started it, like I said, 20 years ago, and modeling it largely after how my dad did his charity golf tournament for Providence College, and started from there, and started fairly small. I think we raised about $50,000 that year, probably had about 80 or 90 golfers coming out. And the deal was basically Decor, as Decor, we'd offer these sponsorships as well as people could come register as an individual golfer. And then Decor would match the proceeds 100%. So the net proceeds, whatever came in. And so, like I said, I think the tournament raised 30 or 40,000, and then Decor put in another 30 or 40 to match afterwards. And we had guest speakers, I guess speaker come out and all that. And so that was 20 years ago, and we're still running it today. So this is this last August we had our 20th one, which I'm still running the tournament and have done it for 20 years. And it's changed a lot over the years. Like in the early years, like I said, we had a guest speaker come out. I had like Milt Stiegel, we had him come out and speak. We had Laurie Boschman come out and speak. We had Ryan Walter, like former captain of the Montreal Canadiens, come out and speak.
mm-hmm.
We've had lots of different speakers coming out at the tournament. And of course, we organize all kinds of games on the golf course. So like every hole, or about two, maybe 3/4 of the holes. So about 12 of the holes have something going on, like a game going on, whatever it might be. And we do all the registration, and we do a banquet and prizes and all that kind of usual stuff afterwards. And we have a speaker speak. And we eventually expanded it to 4 charities because it was getting fairly big. And so the original 3 charities we supported were Youth for Christ in Morden, Pembina Counseling Center, and Pregnancy Care Center. And then eventually we added a 4th charity, which the 4th charity changes every year to whoever ownership wants to change it to. So we've done Moli Children's Family, which is an orphanage in Africa. We've done Family Life Network, which does lots of radio and media broadcasting in mostly third world or South American countries, to various different charities. Inner City Youth Alive, which is in a youth drop-in center in downtown Winnipeg, to all kinds of different charities we've supported, and each one changes. And now we've kind of changed it to whoever that 4th charity is basically provides the speaker who can talk a lot about their charity, what they do, how they're making a difference in people's lives and whatnot. And so now for 20 years in, we've raised $1.55 million for charity over the 20 years. So for me, it's a big thing, again, that Decor is involved in. It's something that I can contribute to from a leadership standpoint and a love of golf standpoint. So that's been a huge synergy for me. And I mean, honestly, I get to do this mostly during working hours. So the company is paying for my hours while I'm doing this. So I don't want to take that for granted at all either. So they've been very supportive that way. And it's been a good synergy for me between maybe some of my strong suits from the sporting world side of things and the leadership side of things to what they want to do and helping those less fortunate and those in need. So that's been a big one for me that I've been involved in over the years, for sure.
Wow, that's amazing. And you know what's interesting, and I like what you're saying, is that you're helping people in Morden, so you're helping people like in Winnipeg, so you're helping the local community around you, but as well as you're helping people across the globe. I mean, the impact is the reach is huge, and you know, what's funny about that is that even with one person or one child, is, you know, you create that ripple effect where you impact one person's life, and you never know how far that's going to go ripple out past that, right? Maybe they get inspired and help others.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, you don't know what your money, like how it's making that difference. Like one of the charities we've supported called World Serve. So I'm not sure where it's at today, but they support pastors in China and Cuba and Vietnam, these kind of places. And back when the church had to go underground, so literally is an underground church. So you're not allowed to publicly be a Christian in China. Essentially, you get thrown in jail. And so they would dig holes in the ground and have secret church services and training. And so we're helping those pastors in those countries. And yeah, like you're coming to a golf tournament and you have no idea the impact you're making in something like that, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's incredible. Like it's so far reaching that way. So yeah, it's been I've been happy to be able to be involved with that. And like I said, it's not something that I could do on my own by any stretch of the imagination. It's Decor that is allowing me to do that. And we get in a lot of local community people, but a lot of them are suppliers that'll come in. So they fly in from Quebec, from BC, from North Carolina, from Wisconsin. They come from all over the place to be a part of this tournament. But then at the same time, before or after, they're doing business at Decor and meeting with our people. So it's a great synergy of bringing the business community together with those we have contact with and those in the community who just love the cause to be able to help people around the world and locally. So yeah, I think it's been a great thing.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, that sort of epitomizes the whole better the pond concept.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really, really does. So thank you for
yeah,
that.
totally. Yeah, and people love even locals. Like they say, well, I'm going to get my money matched. We match 50. I shouldn't say only. We match 50% of the proceeds now because we dropped it down when the term was getting so big, and then during the Great Recession, things are a bit tighter. We
Yeah.
still kept the tournament going, but obviously it was a bit more impactful on the bottom line side of things. But yeah, it's been great. So great so far, and people knowing them we get their money matched is a big thing to them because they have the same heart, they love the same causes. So getting it matched has been a big deal, and yeah, big thing for Decor.
Yeah, I'm very generous with Decor.
Yeah,
It says a lot about the company. It says a lot about the leadership of Decor.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. So, Dave, what's one lesson that you've learned along your travels that you would share with an entrepreneur starting a business today?
Interesting. So my wife is an entrepreneur. I can't say I helped her a whole lot because she's had all her own motivation. She runs a travel agency out of our house, and she's done it now for probably 10, 15 years. And she not just like she runs her own agency and has other travel agents actually working within her agency as well. So I've helped her maybe with maybe the business aspects of getting it set up, but she did 99% of it herself, which I'm super proud of her for doing that. And she's done a great job of doing it. But what would I say help entrepreneurs? So, it's a good question because I've never really been an entrepreneur myself. But you hear all the stats about how many businesses fail within their first year or first 2 years.
Yep.
And you might love what you do. Like we might have even so just using decor cabinets or cabinets in general, you might love designing kitchens and you want to say, okay, I want to become a kitchen designer. I want to run my own business. But loving designing kitchens doesn't make you an entrepreneur and a business person, right? There's so many other parts to it. And so we see that sometimes here as well, where they might not be the best at managing the business side of it, but they might be really good at doing what they do, what they love to do, which is designing kitchens. But you got to be able to get the business aspect of that as well. So whether you're going to teach yourself some of those things, you have to invest time in doing that, or you're going to get strong people around you, whether that be advisors or hire people to help you with some of those business aspects. You need somebody who's going to teach you or help you with the business side of things. And you need to surround yourself with those good people that can kind of help you along that way. And so that could even include a business mentor as well. I think you've been involved with tech in the past, so whether it be through something like that, through whatever it might be, but surround yourself with good people who have been there and done that can kind of guide you and maybe help you avoid the pitfalls that you might make otherwise. Learn from their mistakes, whatever it might be, but get people that give you good advice that you can trust from a business perspective. It would probably be the biggest thing I would suggest.
So let's just go back to this for a second. It just popped in my head of thinking about, you say you've never been an entrepreneur, but when you were planting trees In a way you
Okay,
were,
fair enough.
right? In a way you
That's fair
were,
enough.
right? But did you have someone that mentored you to help you plant those trees to learn how to do it correctly out of the gate, or did you have to just figure it out on your own and learn from your mistakes?
Yeah, fair enough. You're right. So when I started, I was hired by a guy named Dave Unger, who out of Winnipeg, and he was a strong leader, but he was a lead by showing you how it's done. Like I forget what there's a phrase for it, but he's he would go out there and plan to show you how to work hard. And he obviously taught you the technique. You have to teach yourself the technique and what is a good quality product and all that. That kind of goes without saying. But he has to inspire you to do what you got to do and to work hard in that situation. And he's got to invoke a trust in you, and he's got to be able to motivate you. And so he taught me hard work. He taught me good technique, obviously, in doing what I needed to do from a quality of work standpoint. And he was a guy that was more, in hockey terminology, you would call him a player's coach.
Okay. Yep.
It would be the best way I could describe it, again, my sports background. But he wasn't the guy up there being the disciplinarian kind of thing, but he would show you by doing kind of thing. And he was in the trenches with you. So he motivated you to want to do well for him. He got a percentage of whatever you planted, that he'd get a percentage of that as a cut of his compensation, essentially.
Okay.
So, but he was more of a player's coach, is how I would describe him that way. And he did a great job with that. And so I tried to do that same type of thing with my team. So normally in a tree planting environment, the other foreman, he's moving on in life, he's going on to something else. And so you inherit his crew. If he chooses you as what he, to succeed him. In my case, I didn't have anybody. My foreman was still working, but I was offered the opportunity to start my own crew.
Mm-hmm.
So I did not have anybody really mentoring me how to do interviews over the phone or any of that kind of stuff. So I had to kind of learn from doing, of which I made mistakes along the way, as I described earlier already. But I learned from those mistakes. At least I like to think I've learned from those mistakes. I still do learn from my mistakes, because I still do make them.
Sure.
But that was a trial by fire at the beginning, because I hired my own crew of 5 guys, or I shouldn't say 5 guys. So it's four men and one lady. Actually, no, it was 4 men and 2 ladies that were on my crew that I hired to start. And then you have to kind of, because none of them knew each other beforehand. Actually, 2 of them did. 2 of them were friends. They were both rookies, friends coming from school together. But otherwise, you're creating this thing from scratch. And without having a strong leadership team, kind of like I said, because I only hired one veteran I was able to find, and he was not a great mentor for anybody else. I kind of had to do it on my own. And it took a long time for us to get going, a long time for these guys to get going. But I remember I had 2 rookies that stand out in my mind. One of them just wanted to go as fast as he could. And I kept on telling him, get the technique, get the quality down, and then go faster. But he would refuse to do that. And I kept making him replant all the time. And he got the most money in the first few days, but then after a while, no, he wasn't, because the other guy that was getting quality down and then picked up speed started to exceed him. And all of a sudden he was making way more money than this guy. And this guy's like, oh yeah, you're right. I got to slow down. I got to get it right first, then pick up the speed. But without having any other mentors for him other than myself, it took a while to get that message across. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I was an entrepreneur in some ways in that regard, but yeah, it's an interesting learning experience, that's for sure.
So obviously, if I listen to you, is like, having a mentor or somebody who's preceded you, right, to teach you things that it can help, reduce the mistakes made, right? It is kind of going slow to go fast.
It is. And I had a similar kind of thing here at Decor, actually, because when I started, the company was growing, and I came in as the young guy. So it would have been, I don't know, 25 years old or whatever. I got hired in as a new layer above the guy that was here before, who was probably about 60 years old. So now this guy that's 60, that's been the accountant here, is here, and he's got this young guy coming in as his boss. And I can only imagine how that would have felt for him. Mm-hmm. Really, right? And I probably didn't handle it well myself, I'm guessing, at the beginning. but I know he wasn't exactly forthcoming with information or helping me helping me out either, because he would have his own feelings about it too, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was not very forthcoming with any information or helping me kind of get established. He was a nice guy, but I think he's probably felt obviously very threatened by this young guy coming in and not sure how to handle it himself.
Sure.
Um, but it was kind of an interesting situation for me coming in, trying to feel it out and get used to it and understand my role
Mm-hmm.
in doing that. So yeah, I was kind of a bit of an entrepreneur within my own job because I had to figure everything out myself, kind of to some degree.
It's being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So, all right, one last question for you, Dave.
Yeah.
So if you were standing on top of a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
If I was standing on top of a mountain and the whole world was listening to me, so I had the chance to talk to everybody. Ooh, you'd have to choose your words very, very wisely, of which I'm trying to do now and delay time to be able to come up with, to think of something. But in the end, I would go back to what Jesus Christ said is that love God and love each other and treat each other. All the golden rule, right? Do to others as you have them do unto you. I mean, the whole Sermon on the Mount thing, like, is probably the best speech in history. But if you do those things, if everybody did those things, this world would be a very different place.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I realize this is my faith coming out and what I believe coming out, and that might not be the same thing for everybody else. But I think that the general principle of do unto others as you would have them do unto you is pretty universally applicable, regardless of where you're at in life or what you believe or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a fairly worldwide thing that could make everybody, make the world a better place. I would say something along that line. But yeah, I would have to think. I would have to choose my words pretty carefully and think about that one for a while.
It's a great start.
Yeah.
It's a great start. All right. So, Dave, I really want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for your stories. I want to thank you for everything that you're doing to better the pond with yourself and as well as with Decor. We'll give Stan Pauls another little shout out while we can.
Sure.
But if anyone wants to find you, Dave, where do they go to find you?
Well, at Decor Cabinets in Morden, Manitoba. I'm on LinkedIn. I think I'm on Twitter, but not to go on there very often. But yeah, they can contact me through Decor Cabinets for sure, very easily. Just call the front desk here. 204-822-6151 is our phone number. Otherwise, yeah, I think there's a lot of ways you can probably Google me. I haven't done that in a long time to see how I pop up, but LinkedIn, whatever it might be, I'm on those things. So.
All right. So not Twitter.
Well, I don't know. You probably could. I haven't been on there in a long time. So
You may not respond.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
All right. So
call it Twitter anymore, right? Whatever it's called today.
we'll reach out at X, I think they call it now. So
yeah.
So at Decor Cabinets, as well as LinkedIn, that's where I think they're probably the best place to find you. We'll put that in the show notes so people want to reach out and have a conversation with you, find out either about Decor, find out about the golf tournament, find out all the things you're doing to better the pond. So
Awesome.
so we'll make sure that's in there for you. All right. So we had a great time here with Dave Schellenberg from Decor Cabinets. This is Warren Barry, and I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond because we're better together. Thank you so much, Dave.
Thanks, Warren. Appreciate the time.